And we're live. Hey, everybody. It's your man, James, Mr. Gwen Treasure, back in with some more video action for you. Today's another last-minute hustle live stream. Didn't have this really planned out too much, although I will admit this one isn't quite as last-minute as the last one was, because I did have a little bit of prep time on this because I needed it. I was going to talk about this because it's a big deal, but, still just I had no idea I was going to be doing another live stream so soon. So here we are, last minute. I hope you guys enjoy this. And let's get right on into it. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Odyssey film by Christopher Nolan. It's coming out here in a couple of days. And all the controversy and other things that are surrounding it. There's lots to talk about it, lots of things being said by a lot of different people. And we're going to get into some of that. We're going to get into why the controversy is there, how this plays into the culture wars, and, what it really means, what some of the changes he's doing is really saying, whether he is intending it or not. And so because it's very much a very big deal. So let's get me off the screen here, as we always do, because we know it's never about me. And let's go ahead and get some stuff shared here. And here we go. There it is. This is the movie poster for the Odyssey. Now you can see here it's a big budget blockbuster. We got big names in the film, and it's seeing a lot of controversy because of not so much as what the story is about, but what Nolan is doing differently compared to what the actual story is. We all know this is supposedly based off of the classic tale by Homer, of Odysseus and his travails through the Grecian landscape at the time, and but Nolan is taking a very different tact, I think, on this than a lot of others would like, and that's where a lot of the controversy comes. I mean, there's lots of little things that are a problem. People talk about like how the ship here, you can see right here in this ship, that is not accurate to Greek ships of the time. You got armor in this that is in the film, not accurate to the times. You got the language that they speak, the way they talk, that is not of that time or even close to it. And of course, the biggest deals that a lot of people are making the biggest deals about are the casting choices, which some are just, they stymie the imagination why you would want to do that. And we're going to get into some of this here, because of course the biggest one, of course, is this. What is it? Napita Luongo, or whatever her name is. She is going to be Helen of Troy, the face that lost 1,000 ships. Now, again, a lot of people are saying this is a racial thing, but I don't think it is. It's more of a cultural thing, because the woman here, this is the woman who played Helen in the film Troy 20 years ago, and she fits the mold of what you would expect Helen of Troy to look like, whereas Luongo doesn't. And it's nothing against her as an actress. I'm sure she's a fine actress. I've never watched anything with her in it, but I've heard from people that she does great stuff, so she may be a great actress, but she's not Helen of Troy. She does not fit the parameters of what is necessary, because again, these characters are described in the poem by Homer. So it's not as if like it doesn't matter because it doesn't say specifically, if they are or not. It does matter. When you're going to take something of a historical nature like the Odyssey, like Homer's work, and you're going to translate that into a film, you need to be accurate to what those times were like, to what the people were like, to what was written, because otherwise you just you denigrate the very story itself. And again, it happens even more. Here we got Elliot Page, who is going to play Sinon. Now, it was originally said they were going to play Achilles, and it turns out that was not the case. But they're playing Sinon, and again, a Greek warrior. And again, if you've seen Elliot Page, they're like 5 foot nothing, 110 pounds soaking wet. This is not a great Grecian warrior, not even close. When you want that, I mean, look at Brad Pitt here from Troy, again from 2004. Look at his build. Look at the way he looks. This looks like how would you expect a Grecian warrior to look? He's got the build, he's got the strength, he's got the height, he's got the command. Everything about him says this is a Grecian warrior. And that's why it was effective in the movie Troy. You bought him as Achilles because he had that presence and he had that build and the look. He looked fit for the part, whereas Elliot Page most definitely does not look like a Grecian warrior by any standard. And again, it's not as if this is something you can just do. They just pick Brad Pitt out of a line and say, just anybody will do. There's a lot of work that goes involved in this. As we can see here, here's Gerard Butler from 300, another film about, Grecian type warriors. And you can see here he is like how he normally looks. And here he is when he was doing 300. I mean, look at the difference in the cut. This is the work he had to put in to get into the shape that is necessary to portray a Grecian type warrior. Do you think for a minute Elliot Page could ever get in this good of shape, could ever look like this? Of course not. Of course not. And again, these are the big ones that people are getting on is these things with the casting, but the casting choices, really tell more about what Nolan's thoughts on this are rather than the actual story itself. The fact that Sinan wasn't even in the Odyssey. It's a role that he added in, from another story so that he could have Elliot Page in the film. You see, so he's making all these types of changes. So it's not just even the person who's playing the role that's the problem. It's the fact that the role is even in the story because that is not a part of the story. And this is what you're seeing is a lot of people pushing back on this stuff because they don't want this. They're like, we don't want a bunch of stuff that isn't part of the story, that isn't what this is about, because otherwise, it's not really telling the story of the Odyssey. And that's what you want. But again, in these modern times that we're in, which seems to be what Nolan is trying to do here. He said this before, he wants this for like a modern audience. Whenever you hear those two words, that's always a red flag, modern audience. The Odyssey is not a story for a modern audience. It's a story of the past. And if a modern audience does not like that past, well, then they don't have to read that story or see that movie or whatever. But you don't alter it to say, we're going to make it fit what the parameters they want. No, you need to fit the parameters of what the story is. I've talked about this with comics many times, the difference between a good writer and a bad writer. A good writer tailors their story to fit the character they're using. A bad writer alters the character to fit the story they want to tell. And you can tell in this that Nolan is very much doing the latter of the two. And that is a problem. But, people are going to defend this film no matter what, because there's always those out there who will do that. And, I got some stuff here to show you guys that's going to get into that here in a second here as soon as I bring it up. And, one of them I'm going to bring up here is John Campea, who is a well-known movie reviewer type on YouTube, and he talked about this. He brought this up and did a little video about it, and we're going to go through his video, and we're going to see what he has to say here. And so let me bring that up, and let's get into John's words, and I'll take breaks in here to make my points as he makes his.
Hey guys, John here. Now, Christopher Nolan has earned a level of trust with film audiences that very few filmmakers in the history of cinema have ever achieved. When you look at his filmography from the Dark Knight trilogy to Inception, Interstellar, and his massive Academy Award-winning success with Oppenheimer, he has proven time and time again that he is a master of the craft. He is a director who demands excellence, handles complex narratives with precision, and carries a meticulous vision for every single frame of his films. And look at the cast that he has assembled for this upcoming film, The Odyssey.
Now, after that little shine job of Nolan's credits, which is all true, I can't say John is wrong, that he says that he takes such meticulous care of things, and yet he brings up this cast as somehow this is a meticulous thing of care. When, again, as you saw with the images I've shown you, it is not meticulous in the least. And again, it's not just the casting. There's lots of other problems that are not accurate, that are not, being treated with the proper respect that they should be given in this film. But yet here he is saying that this is what Nolan does, and yet he's not doing that here. See, this is part of what the problem is with people, is he's right. They do trust him. He has someone who people have come to rely on and think like he's one of the last real big name directors who can actually make people go to a film. Like you hear Christopher Nolan's work on a film, you're thinking, I got to go see that movie. He's one of the few left in the industry who can do this. And yet here, for some reason, he's throwing all away of the stuff that he does that makes people want to see his films, and is altering things for reasons that we'll get into here in a little bit.
We're talking about an absolute powerhouse lineup of elite talent.
Elite talent. But is it the proper talent? See, that's the thing here that John is sort of sidestepping is, again, are these people right for the roles? Lupita Nyong'o? Obviously not. Zendaya? Obviously not. Elliot Page, certainly not. There's people, even Matt Damon, not really. These are people who don't fit the parameters of the characters they're playing. If you're watching a movie, you want to be immersed in that world. You want to be taken into that world and feel as though you're like a fly on the wall watching this stuff happen. And if you have things that are taking you out, like again, miscasting people, inaccuracies in the dialogue and the way they speak, inaccuracies in the set designs and things like the ships and the armors that they wear, the clothing, that's a problem, because you're taking away the immersion for people. And that should always be here, whether it's comic books or movies or even music, any type of entertainment, creative endeavor. Immersion for the audience should always be your number one priority. If you do anything to disrupt that, that's a problem.
Matt Damon, Tom Holland, Anne Hathaway. These are heavy-hitting performers who choose their projects very carefully and consistently deliver top-tier work. On paper, this project has every single ingredient required to be an absolute masterpiece. By all accounts, film fans should be universally thrilled, counting down the days until they get to see this vision come to life on the biggest screen possible. But unfortunately, that's not what's happening across the entire internet right now. Instead of celebrating what promises to be a massive cinematic achievement, a very loud, maybe small, but very angry corner of the online film community has decided to completely denounce the movie. They are writing it off, calling it garbage and declaring it dead on arrival. And the reason for this massive wave of preemptive hatred has absolutely nothing to do with the script, the cinematography, the directing, or the footage. As a matter of fact, they haven't even seen the film yet. It is entirely because Lupita Nyong'o, a brilliant Black actress, has been cast in the role of Helen of Troy. Now,
there it is right there. So you can see right now, this is the play that guys like John are going to do with the criticism. Now, I pointed out to you how there's been criticisms about the ships and the armor and the language and other cast members, but he's going to try to break all this down to more racism, because that's what these cucks always do. These shill media cucks like John Campea, that's what they do. They don't want an honest dialogue. They don't want to actually converse and deal with the actual things people are saying. It's, I want to narrow this down to the simplest, common denominator I can, so I can just hit that and make you look bad when you criticize something. And again, notice how I said they haven't even seen the film, except we have seen the film. How many trailers, like what, 3 or 4 different trailers have been put out for this movie? So we have seen this film. We do know what's going on. And again, what is the point of a trailer? It's to get you to want to see the movie. And so if they're getting backlash from this, based on the trailers, based on the interviews from people that they're doing, with the cast and Nolan going out there and talking about what they're doing and why, if that's pushing people to say, yo, this looks like it's gonna suck, you would think that would give them pause to go, wait a minute, what have we done here? But no, instead they have people like John here running flack for them, to protect this movie at all costs. And again, I'm going to get into the reasons why they do this stuff.
Even 5 minutes looking at the comment sections or social media threads discussing the Odyssey, you will see an incredibly toxic wave of backlash. People are outright refusing to see the movie. They're accusing Nolan of going woke, claiming that the film is prioritizing a political agenda over historical accuracy, and writing off the entire project before a single frame of the movie has even been witnessed. It is a level of definitive judgment.
Well, there it is. Before a single frame, except frames have been witnessed. As I said, trailers, the 3 or 4 trailers they put out, that's plenty of frames. How many frames do we have to watch before we have a right to have an opinion, John? This is what they do. This is how they try to silence the critics, by trying to downplay what they say, to try to narrow it down to the simplest common denominator that they can attack, and then say that it's all just a bunch of garbage on their end. They have no idea what they're doing because they haven't even seen the movie. This is what they do. This is the protection racket that the shill media plays for Hollywood, the comic industry, all the entertainment branches, and a lot of other things too as well.
judgment and outright hatred for a piece of art that nobody outside the production has actually laid eyes on yet. Now, what makes this situation so incredibly frustrating is the glaring contradiction in what these detractors usually claim to want. Whenever discussions about casting comes up in film communities, the common refrain we hear from audiences is, I don't care about anything else. I just want the best actor or actress for the job. I just want the best movie possible.
Now, again, this is the slickness. They're taking the context of that and changing it. You see, yes, people have said those things. We don't want you to cast someone just because. We want people who are good at what they do. Again, this is the whole thing of DEI, where you give it to someone who of a lower standard because you're trying to meet a quota of some kind, rather than saying we're getting the best people to do the job. And yes, that's true. People do say that. That is absolutely 100% correct. But the context John is leaving out in this is when we're talking about a movie, when you say you want the best person for the job, you want the best person who also fits the parameters of that role. Does Lupita Nyong'o fit the parameters of Helen of Troy? Does Elliot Page fit the parameters of Sinon? Does even Matt Damon fit the parameters of the character he's playing? This is the question that he doesn't talk about. This is the point he ignores when he's about to go into his little tirade against the people being critical of the film. Watch as he does this.
It's something we should all want. If that statement were actually true, though, then the casting of Lupita Nyong'o should be met with universal praise. Lupita Nyong'o is objectively considered one of the finest, most elite actresses in the business today. She's an Academy Award winner. Her performances, 12 Years a Slave, Us, Black Panther, have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that she possesses an extraordinary emotional range, a commanding screen presence, and a deep dedication to her craft. If your goal as a film fan is truly to have the most talented performer in the role give us the best movie possible, Lupita Nyong'o checks every box. She's not the only choice, but she's a great choice. Yet the very people who claim talent is all that matters are the ones leading the charge to tear this movie down.
Again, look at what he omitted. She's a great actress, all these great skills. She has a great emotional range and glazing her like crazy. And yet he doesn't answer the simple question. Does she fit the parameters of the character she is supposed to play? If this was again, and he'll get into this in a minute, but I'm saying, but that's the key in all this. That's what he always is leaving out in this. And they do that on purpose. This isn't by accident. He didn't accidentally forget. Oh, I forgot to address that point. He intentionally obfuscates it and, sidesteps it to paint this narrative that the people who have a problem with this are just simply racists.
So let's take a second and look at the mathematical equation. Let's really break down the logic or complete lack of logic. Behind this preemptive condemnation, the people who are currently online declaring that the Odyssey is going to be a terrible movie have not seen a single frame of the film yet. They don't know how the story is being adapted. They don't know the context of the world Christopher Nolan is building. And most importantly, they have absolutely no idea what Lupita Nyong'o's performance is going to look like in the film. She could step into this role and deliver an absolute masterclass in acting. She could give a performance so haunting, so captivating, and so powerful that it becomes the definitive highlight of the entire film. It could be an undisputed award-worthy turn that elevates the entire cinematic experience. But the people writing off the movie right now don't know if she's going to be great or not. And the truth is, they don't care. They have completely removed performance, talent, and the execution from the equation. They have made a very simple, incredibly narrow calculation in their minds. Lupita Nyong'o is black, therefore, the Odyssey is a terrible movie.
There it is. There it is. He all but said, yeah, the critics, they're racists. That's what they are. Never mind, again, all the stuff I've pointed out that other people are talking about in the film that they have problems with, besides Lupita Nyong'o. Never mind that I point out that he's avoiding the key component of the criticism against her because it's about her, her not fitting the parameters of the character she's playing. Notice how he doesn't address any of those things and just bring it down to, yeah, these people are racist, because that's what they do. This is all they have. And again, this wouldn't happen the other way. If you had a character, from a story that was black and you replaced them with a white character, but they're the best actor ever. They got all these accreditations and all these skills and all this emotional range that he said about Lupita Nyong'o. It wouldn't matter if they had all that. Hey, that's a black character. Hey, you can't let them wait. Hell, they do that now. The Black Panther, talking about doing a new Black Panther where they wanted to get this one guy. I forget his name off the top of my head. And the black movie audience attacked that guy because they said he wasn't black enough. His skin wasn't dark enough. He's too light of a skin of a brother to play the Black Panther. Black Panther got to be dark, dark. But I didn't see John, right, doing a little sermon to those people saying, "You're so wrong. He's such a great actor. He has all these great skills, and you're just basing it on his color. You're racist." He didn't do that to them, but he'll do it here. And again, you're going to see why. I'm going to explain all that to you why.
That is the entire equation for them. Her skin color is the beginning, middle, and end of their critique. By condemning the film before seeing how her talent serves the story, they are openly admitting that her performance does not matter to them. The only thing they are concerned with is the color of her skin, exposing the fact that this backlash isn't about artistic integrity at all. So let me take a sec.
Except it is about artistic integrity, the integrity of fitting the parameters of the character you play. She does not do that. That isn't artistic. That isn't artistic. And that's in artistic integrity. That's part of that. You have to fit the character you're playing. Like me, take me. I'm a 50-something, out of shape, overweight white guy. Should I be playing some, young, strong, masculine character? No, of course not. I could never play that role. People wouldn't buy it. They would not be immersed if they saw me playing the role. Because this is going to be some 20-something guy who's the peak prime of his condition. I'm obviously not. I don't fit the parameters that are needed for the role. So it doesn't matter how great an actor I am. All that would matter is, yeah, he doesn't look like the way the character should look. And that's exactly what's happening here. But again, he isn't addressing any of this. You saw it. He doesn't care. All they care about is skin color. That's because the skin color is part of the parameters of the character. So yes, they actually do care about artistic integrity. It's just that he wants to avoid the artistic integrity that they're talking about to call them racists.
And address some of the objections some of these folks might raise. Of course, the people leading this backlash don't want to admit that their objections are rooted in prejudice, so they construct elaborate excuses to justify their anger. Let's address the two most common arguments they throw out at a project like this. The first defense mechanism is almost always the Black Panther argument. It's a standard internet talking point that people think is a massive checkmate. They'll say something like, "Oh yeah? Well, how would you like it if they cast a white actor to play Black Panther? You'd be furious." It's the exact same thing. Except it isn't the same thing at all. This argument completely, fundamentally misunderstands how narrative and character development work in storytelling. In fiction, 95% of characters do not have their core narratives, motivations, or personal identities directly tied to their specific ethnicity. A writer might describe a character's physical appearance a certain way in a book or a myth, but that description rarely serves an important load-bearing pillar of who that character is, what drives them, or how the plot itself functions. However, there are a few very distinct exceptions where a character's ethnicity is a core, inseparable part of their story, their motivations, and the entire narrative structure. Black Panther is the textbook example of this exception. Stan Lee himself was very clear about why he created the character. Black Panther's entire identity is completely linked to his being the king and protector of Wakanda, a fictional, uncolonized, Black African nation hidden from the world. His race, his heritage, and his cultural background are the entire foundation of the narrative and his motivations. If you change Black Panther's ethnicity, the entire story of Wakanda, isolationism, completely collapses. Another clear example of this to me is Batman. Bruce Wayne isn't just a guy who happens to be white. Growing up with extreme generational white privilege and immense old money wealth in the specific societal structure of Gotham City is a defining load-bearing element of his background. It shapes how the city views him, how he operates within high society, and the specific legacy of the Wayne family that he carries. His background is directly tied to the narrative and the reality of his character. But when
So look, I like to play a little bit because I wanted you to get the full context of what John is saying here. Now, again, he's using this the whole canard of, well, it's different for when you use the Black Panther because his skin color is integral to the story that's being told. Well, wouldn't the skin color of the people of Greece be integral to the story being told, John? So if Helen of Troy is Grecian, shouldn't she look like a Grecian person? And what did Grecian people look like 3,000 years ago? They didn't look like Lupita Nyong'o, did they? Oh, but see, again, totally obfuscates that. But he is right that yes, if it's a core tenet, it matters. And it does here too. But if he wants to say, well, you can't use the Black Panther, okay, I'll use other ones, John. How about Luke Cage? How about Blade? How about we have Blade be a white guy in the next Blade movie? Would that be okay? Because, well, what's the big deal, right? After all, it doesn't matter that he's black. That's not a key component to his story. What his story is about a guy who, when his mother was in the middle of giving birth to him, she was attacked by a vampire, and then he gains all their strengths and none of their weaknesses and goes out and hunts vampires. What about that specifically says you have to be black, John? How about Luke Cage? What, a guy who was wrongly convicted and put in prison and then escapes and goes out and becomes a pay-for hero while trying to clear his name. What in that says you have to be black, John? See, you could do it with those characters, but I guarantee you, if you made Luke Cage white in a movie, if you made Blade white in a movie, all the blackety blacks are going to be out there going, "Oh, you're taking away our representation. Oh, it's a bunch of white supremacy. It's whitewashing. It's so evil." That's what you'd hear. But yet they do it this way, and somehow, well, that's okay when it's done this way. It doesn't matter that Helen of Troy was a Greek, and so she should be of a light-skinned nature. It doesn't matter that that's what it is. Lupita Nyong'o is a great actress, and she's about to have the best actors. It doesn't matter if they fit the parameters in this, but of course, if it was something that had a non-white lead or a non-white role that was required in the parameters, that better be stood by. Because if it isn't, as I said, even with the Black Panther, you got the blackety blacks out there attacking lighter skinned brothers they offer up as who might be the next Black Panther, saying they're not black enough. So don't hand me it doesn't matter here either. It absolutely does. And I love how he brings in Batman and has to trash him, his white privilege. What the hell is different about it? You know, well, why couldn't Batman be black? But there are no rich black people? Black people aren't the victims of crime? There's never been a black kid who had his parents murdered? That never happened? Again, what is it about Batman that he has to be white? I mean, going by John's logic here. That's what his logic is for Helen Troy. Why does she have to be white? Why don't we just get a great actress to do it? Well, okay, then we'll just get a great actor to do Batman. It doesn't have to be white, right? Again, he talks about the lack of logic of the critics of this movie, and yet he himself is lacking logic in his very own arguments. But then you can't expect anything else of these shills.
When you look at a mythological figure like Helen of Troy, her core narrative function is the face that launched 1,000 ships.
And look at the drawing. Look, does that look anything like Lupita Nyong'o? No. So I would say how she looks very much matters as being the face that launched 1,000 ships. See, again, the parameters of the character. This is what Greeks looked like 3,000 years ago when Homer wrote the story. This is what they look like. They did not look like Lupita Nyong'o. So it doesn't matter that she's a great actress with great range and great skills and great talent. That's all well and good if she can be in a role where she fits the parameters. Here she does not.
Has nothing to do with her being white or black. Her story is about a woman of unparalleled, captivating beauty whose existence sparks a massive, epic conflict between nations. Her motivation.
Well, if that's the case, John, then she still fails because Lupita Nyong'o is definitely not what I would call a 10 or even a 9. 7 maybe, 6.5. I mean, she's not ugly, but the face that launched 1,000 ships, and we're talking like a stellar beauty has to be what this is. I mean, even though I think, she probably wouldn't be perfect for it. Sydney Sweeney much more fits the line of what you would expect of Helen of Troy than Lupita Nyong'o does. And that's the thing here. See, everything he says, he contradicts himself and his own arguments. Friend Pops is here. Yeah, Ryan Gosling as T'Challa. That would be awesome. That would be hilarious. Or how about this? Since we're going to go older, why don't we get Christian Bale to be T'Challa? That would be hilarious. I would love to see that. That would be hilarious.
And her place in the narrative are defined by her beauty, her tragedy, and her presence, not the specific geographic undertones of her skin pigmentation.
But those skin pigmentations matter because of who she is and where she is. It matters because that was the skin pigmentation of the people in the area, in the region, in that time. That's why it matters, John. That's why it's a parameter for the character. That's why you can't just race swap it because it doesn't make sense.
Changing her race doesn't break the thematic or narrative integrity of the Odyssey the way changing T'Challa's race would completely break the story of Black Panther. The second objection we see is people saying, look, there's nothing wrong with just wanting characters to stay the same as they have traditionally been described. I just want visual accuracy to the source material. And you know what? I actually agree with the core of that statement. It is completely okay to have a personal preference. If you grew up reading classic mythology and visualizing Helen of Troy a specific way based on traditional descriptions, it's perfectly natural to have an ideal image in your mind of what that character should look like on screen.
See, no, again, now notice how he's switching it up here. In your mind. See, not how Homer describes her, not how she's shown in like that image he showed, you know, how she's shown in the actual texts and things. No, 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 how you imagine her. So it's just your preference, and that's fine for you to have a preference. But what you're going to do is say, well, but the movie makers are not beholden to your preferences. No, they're not. They're not beholden to my preferences, John. But you know what they are beholden to, or at least they should be, is the text. They should be beholden to what was it like 3,000 years ago in Greece. That's what they should be beholden to. If you're going to tell a story about a story from a time in Greece 3,000 years ago, yeah, you should be accurate to what Greece was like 3,000 years ago. That's what you should be beholden to. Not my preference, not your preference, not anybody's preference. The preference of what the times were and how people looked then and how they dressed and how they talked.
However, that argument completely loses all of its validity and integrity the second you claim that a deviation from your preference completely destroys the entire movie. We all have preferences when it comes to film adaptations. We might prefer a character to have a certain hair color, wear a specific costume, or speak with a certain accent. But when a director changes a costume design or adapts a character style, we don't form angry online mobs and completely seek to destroy and boycott the film before we've ever seen a single frame of it, except for when race is the preference.
And there it is again. You're racists. Only racists have problems with these things. No, John. People of mind, with a mind, have problems with these things because we understand these things. This is the obfuscation that he indulges in. Yeah, he is. I truly do believe he's just another cuck, my friend. That's all he is. He's just another cuck who goes out and wants to flack to keep his access. That's what this is. He's afraid, hey, if I don't glaze these guys and defend them and call the critics racist, I may not get my access. I mean, that's what I think this is, because it makes no sense. Again, how many times has he contradicted himself in his own presentation here? It's ridiculous.
That's when the reaction shifts from a mild preference to an all-out culture war, which tells you exactly what the real issue is. Now let's take...
No, again, skirting around the issue, but he does kind of, yes, it is about a culture war. It's about the culture war for Western culture. That's what it's about, John. It's about the denigrating of Western culture. You see, you don't see this, you know, with other cultures. And if it happened, I guarantee you there would be uproar about this. John would probably be one of the ones leading the charge. You know? No, he doesn't hate them. What he hates is for them to have actual culture of their own. That's what he hates. See, again, that's what we're going to get into in a little bit here, is what's behind all this stuff. But it is about a culture war, John, and it matters. Even as you're trying to downplay it, as he's trying to downplay this to us, tell us that this doesn't matter, it's just a stupid, racist thing. It is actually not. It is very important.
Take a second and talk about the inconsistency and the constantly moving goalposts. The sheer inconsistency of this outrage becomes incredibly obvious when you look at how these same crowds react to other massive changes made to beloved source materials. They constantly move the goalposts to fit their outrage. Take the upcoming Harry Potter HBO series, for example. I've talked about this before. The internet lit up with anger when it was announced that a black actor would be portraying Severus Snape, with people screaming that it was a betrayal of the books because they are changing the character. But where was that absolute burning rage when the original film adaptations cast Alan Rickman? And don't get me wrong, Alan Rickman's the man. He was absolutely magnificent as Snape, and we all love his performance. But factually speaking, Severus Snape is 31 years old in the book. Alan Rickman was in his mid-50s, literally decades older than he is in the book when he started playing the role. That is a massive fundamental deviation from the source material.
No, it is not a massive deviation, John. How many people have we seen where, like, there are people who are in their late 20s and they're playing a teenager because they have a more youthful look? Their skin is in good condition, so they can pass for 18 even though they're 28. You know, age is not as much a problem unless it's a major shift. Again, like I said, like with my example with me, if you had a story about a guy who's going to be like 25 and in great shape, and then you have me at 52 and I'm not in great shape, yeah, that breaks the immersion. That breaks the suspension of disbelief that I'm that character. But Alan Rickman, for 52, did not look 52. He did not look like in his 50s when he did that role. And he matched the parameters of what Snape looks like, whereas Papa Nududu or whatever his name is, he does not fit those parameters, and that is what you see. Yeah, it does. It does, because I want something that actually reflects what the story's supposed to be, rather than what some modern audience thinks it should be. That's the real problem with this. That's one of the real problems behind all of this. But again, we're going to get in a minute here as soon as we finish with John's little dissertation.
That completely shifts the timeline and dynamics of the character's generation. Yet, there was no widespread boycott, no accusations of an agenda, and no full-scale outrage over a 20-plus-year age gap. Why do we object so violently to one specific type of physical difference from the source material, while we completely ignore another completely different physical description from the source material?
Because, John, if the physical description change alters it too much, it's a problem. If it doesn't, it's not. Someone's playing someone in their 30s who's actually in their 50s. If they can pass for someone in their 30s, if they can play it off and it doesn't look like it's too far out of line, you can get away with that. But if you have a character who, again, in this case, is supposed to be Greek, and 3,000 years ago, Greeks were all like white or olive skinned, and you have someone who's a sub-Saharan African-looking person playing that role, that breaks the immersion. That breaks the suspension of disbelief. That's why that physical difference is a problem. Whereas Snape being, being a little older because Alan Rickman is older is not. He still fit the parameters of the character.
Look at how history and the art treat the portrayal of Jesus, for example. For centuries, in countless massive Hollywood epics, the traditional paintings, Jesus has been portrayed by white European actors with blue eyes, which is historically and geographically impossible for a first-century Jewish man from the Middle East. Where is the massive online outrage demanding historical and source material accuracy here? It doesn't exist, because that specific change doesn't trigger their cultural anxieties. We even saw...
Yes, John, it doesn't. Because, again, this is we're not talking about a minor thing. We're talking about major change. I mean, again, imagine if you had Jesus played, as an Asian man. There would be outrage about that. Why? Because Jesus was not Asian. Now, granted, you can sit there and say, well, these white guys, these white Europeans, they don't, well, no, they can get a tan, darken their skin a bit, They can try to play, again, see, there are ways to mitigate it, but there are certain things you can't do. An Asian person, they're not going to look like Jesus, even close. You couldn't put this beard on them and go, okay, now they're Jesus. That's not going to happen. See, again, look at the disingenuousness of this guy. Yeah, again, see, again, look at the specifics of what he says. How the blue eyes Europeans, which means blue-eyed white people. See, again, what's he hitting at? Nazis. Why? Because you're racist. See, again, it's so pathetic and transparent what he's doing. And, I don't even know why he bothered to post this.
All this years ago with the remake of Battlestar Galactica, my all-time favorite television show. When Ronald D. Moore announced the project, a massive wave of fans threw a tantrum because Starbuck was being changed from a man to a woman being portrayed by our beloved Katie Sackhoff. They claimed it ruined the integrity of the original show. But it's fascinating to note that those exact same outraged fans didn't say a single word about the fact that Colonel Ty, who was played by a black actor, Terry Carter, in the original series, was changed to a white actor, Michael Hogan, in the remake. And he was awesome in it, by the way. The silence on that change was deafening. The goal...
No. It was not deafening. Because I'll tell you this: I was one of the people who did not like the new Battlestar Galactica. And again, Starbucks changed. Yes, was one of the reasons. I also didn't like that they changed Colonel Ty. I also didn't like the fact that they changed the whole premise behind the story, which was before was a story of hope, of mankind trying to survive an overwhelming force. Whereas here, they created the Cylons themselves. Whereas before, the Cylons were created by another race that attack the humans. So now basically the humans are the creators of their own problem. You see, and that completely changes the dynamic of the show. It takes away the hopefulness. And again, having seen some of the episodes, the characters, they're not just like, imperfect in the sense of like they're not like all gods, but like they were made to be very flawed, like corrupt types of people. And not just like for one episode, here's this character we're introduced to who's a corrupt character. No, they made Adama corrupt. They made, Apollo corrupt. They made these people corrupted to their core, which goes against what the show was about, was the uplifting of humanity, the greatness of humanity, the strength of humanity, in a time of crisis. That's what the show was about originally. This new show was all about saying, look at how bad people can be. Look at how awful people are. And this is what, again, just like with Lupita Nyong'o here, he's missing the point on purpose. This is what they do.
Posts are constantly being moved. A change to a character is completely fine and ignored right up until it involves a person of color taking on a traditionally white role.
And it would happen in the other instance as well, John, if there was a person of color role being taken up by a white person. Again, my Luke Cage example, my Blade example. Go ahead and cast some white guys in those roles, and you watch the outrage that will come. But again, he won't talk about this because that then disproves his point of, oh, well, this is just racism by white people.
Now, look, when you strip away all the excuses, the fake concerns over historical accuracy, and the deeply flawed arguments, it brings us to a very...
Notice that the fake concerns over accuracy and the deeply flawed arguments. The flawed arguments, the only flawed arguments we have, John, are your arguments, which you have contradicted yourself many times in this already. But you see how he just brushes aside the fake concerns of accuracy, like about the ship and the armor and the language that they speak. Yeah, that's all just a bunch of fake stuff. Never mind, there's been plenty of people talking about those aspects. I mean, they got this guy, Travis Scott, who's a rapper, who's going to rap a song at the end credits. It's like, yes, rap music was certainly around in the days of ancient Greece. Yes, that certainly says ancient Greece to me. Can we get Snoop Dogg in the next one? This is what we're talking about. The breaking of the immersion, the breaking of suspension of disbelief, that's the problems here. And when you make bad casting choices, when you have historical inaccuracies and historical epic, when you do things like change the language, have the music not fit the movie and the tone of the story, that's a problem. But again, those are all just fake arguments according to John here.
Very simple conclusion. When the race, gender, or physical appearance of a fictional or mythological character is not absolutely vital to that character's core story, motivations, or narrative themes, we need to step back. We need to stop the preemptive outrage, let go of the rigid gatekeeping, and allow directors and filmmakers the creative freedom to cast whoever they believe is the best performer for the job.
I.e., just let them do whatever they want. And if you don't like it, shut up. That's John's thing. He just wants you to shut up and not talk about it anymore.
Christopher Nolan didn't cast Lupita Nyong'o to check a box or fulfill an internet agenda. He cast her because he is Christopher Nolan, and he believed she was the absolute best actress to bring his vision of this character to life. When the Odyssey finally does hit theaters, I might love it, or I might walk out of the theater completely disliking it. Christopher Nolan is a genius, but even geniuses make movies that don't land with everybody. I personally did not love Tenet all that much. But if I do or don't like the film, I can guarantee you right now that my opinion will be based on the script, the pacing, the directing, and the quality of the storytelling. It will have absolutely nothing to do with the color of Helen of Troy's skin. Let's stop judging movies based on an online agenda, wait until the lights go down in the theater, and judge the work on its actual merits.
There you have it right there. Just, you don't have a right to an opinion until you've seen the movie. Yes, because that's certainly going to be what gets them to listen to us. If we go out and spend our money on this garbage, and then we say, hey, this sucks, then they're going to go, oh, gee, I guess we shouldn't do that anymore. No, John, that's stupid. Of course they're not going to care. The one thing we have on our side right now, the reason they're even concerned about the controversy at all is because they're afraid of what it's going to do to the box office. After having spent $250 million to make the film, they don't want to lose any more money. And they're afraid if the controversy drives down the box office, that's what will happen. So our money is the only leverage we have. And he hears John saying, well, just give it up to him and let him have it. It doesn't matter. Let them have your money. And then you can have a right to talk about the movie. No, John, no. We have seen the movie. We've seen the trailers. We've heard what they've said in their interviews, the cast and the director. We've saw all this. Okay, so we have enough information to make a choice now, John. We have a right to make a choice now. And the only way we can punish them for this garbage is to not give them our money, is to not go see the movie. And here's John telling you, no, you can't do that. You have to give them your money. Wrong, John, wrong. Again, the work of a slimy shill.
And listen, I want to end with this. This shouldn't be an us versus them or an us versus you sort of situation. We're all movie fans, all of us, you, me, all of us. We have far more in common than we don't. We all love thrilling action, great storytelling, being made to feel things only a great movie can make us feel. We all agree on that. So let's allow our directors to make the movies they want to make, go see them together, and then like them or not like them based on the experience we had watching it. Maybe we'll celebrate together. Maybe we'll bitch and cry about it together. Either way, let's celebrate or cry about it for the right reasons. That will do it for me for now, guys.
For the right reasons. What reasons are those, John? What reasons are those? You see, again, this is what they do. And this isn't just John. John is just, he's just one example. He's just one piece of the puzzle. He doesn't factor into all of it. As I'm going to show you here, his stupidity. They watch just one guy, but again, it's not just one guy. It's a lot of people. It's all these people, in the media who are doing this, attacking everybody who does not agree. And again, we're going to show you right here with this Variety article from Marlo Stern back in May. The Odyssey: Why Elon Musk and His Troll Army's Attacks Aren't Just Silly, but Wildly Inaccurate. So right off the bat, look at that title. This certainly sounds like they're going to be talking about the actual criticisms that the people are having about the film, doesn't it? It just tells you right off the bat. So let's get into this. From the team that brought you Why is Snow White Latina? Why are there black people in the Rings of Power? And Star Wars Has Gone Woke comes the latest online onslaught against an anticipated Hollywood project that committed the unfathomable sin of having a diverse cast. I mean, right there in the first paragraph, they just brush aside everything everyone has said. And just to say, you're racist, just like we saw with John. This is what they do. And it's not the diverse cast that people, think is the sin. It's the improper casting. You can have a diverse cast if the movie requires a diverse cast. Like, for example, if you were making this about a modern story, well, okay, have a diverse cast. That's fine because the modern world is very diverse. But you're talking about a historical epic, something from 3,000 years ago in a certain part of the world. So it's got to look the part. It has to sound the part. People have to look the way people looked then. That matters. That's important. Again, another movie that Nolan did was Dunkirk. And he got flack from probably people just like good old Marlo here, who attacked him, saying that the movie was no good because it wasn't diverse enough. It had all these white guys in it, and it should, where were all the non-whites? Where were the minorities? And it's like, well, wait a minute. The movie is about Dunkirk during World War II, when the Germans were fighting the French and the British Expeditionary Force. All white people. And Dunkirk is about the evacuation of the British off of the continent of Europe. So it was all white people that were involved in that. There were black Nazis? No. Was there black British soldiers? No. It was all white people and men too. So, I mean, the fact you didn't see a lot of women or a lot of minorities or whatever is because that's not what the story was. The story was about the actual historical moment of Dunkirk. And it was all about white people. I'm sorry if that offends scumbags like Marlo here, but that's just the way it is. That's the history of the story. You can't just throw all that away and say, well, we just want to have a diverse cast because we're not like that today. Well, maybe we're not like that today, but it was like that then. And it's the same thing with the Odyssey. It was like that then. Helen of Troy would not have been sub-Saharan African. She would have been Grecian, which means white or olive-skinned. That's what she would have been. And that's what the problem is. You cannot just say, well, we're just going to retroactively. See, that's the problem. They want to retroactively change the past. Now we're getting into the points here of they want to retroactively change the past. That's what this is really all about. See, then you saw John mention the culture wars. This is what it's about. Retroactively changing the past to fit modernity. That's what Nolan is doing in the Odyssey. Well, if the Odyssey was today, it'd be diverse. Maybe, but Odyssey isn't today. The Odyssey is 3,000 years ago in Greece. And, they want to change it because they hate white European culture. That's the canard that nobody in the media wants to admit. They hate white European culture, and they want to destroy it. They want to drag it down. Everything they do when they do these things, to any of our myths, any of our legends, the superheroes, or any other movies you saw where characters are being race swapped or gender swapped, it's all in a way to bring down Western culture, to say you were never great. Why do you think they get so mad at MAGA? What's the line? Make America great again. And what's always their comeback for that? When was America ever great? To say it's never been great. And that's how they feel about Western culture in general. And again, I can prove this. Okay, I can prove this. You know, it's not just the attacks from the media here, you know, that show that the vileness of what this is about, but even in how they address it when it's not them. You know, when it's not about Western culture. Here's another story from Variety that I'm about to share with you guys. This is about the Moana movie, the new one, the live action movie just came out and bombed. Okay, this is from just a couple days ago. Moana creatives on working closely to honor Polynesian culture and traditions and why representation matters in the live action film. So, oh my good. So representation matters and accuracy matters and traditions and cultures matter as long as they're the right kinds of cultures. See right here. You know, Dwayne Johnson can finally rejoice. At the premiere of Disney's live-action Moana, the star said that growing up, he didn't see himself represented in the media. Indiana Jones inspired me when I was 8 years old. Watching Harrison Ford, I was like, I want to be that guy. But that guy didn't look like me. And so the film hits the screens this weekend. Asian Americans and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander audiences, Johnson and the film's cast and creatives are finally finding much to celebrate. It's been a decade since the story about the Wayfarer, you know, Moana, blah, 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 blah. The live action feature brings it all to life. Aspects such as traditional Maori tribal tattoos known as tamuko, the rich expression of history through dance, and generations of Polynesian traditions are beating the heart of Thomas Colley's adaptation. That left the film's cast and creators feeling a sense of pride at seeing their culture represented on screen. Look at, there it is. Sense of pride at seeing their culture on screen. But it's okay for them because they're the right culture. You know, if you're not the right culture, it's not okay. It's not okay. You know, let me see, get down to the end here. While critics of the film debate the live action coming too soon, the cast of the film feel otherwise, and that this has been a long time coming for Polynesian representation. So there it is. It's okay to represent the culture when it's the culture we think should be represented. Don't change anything. Make sure you get all these people in to talk about it and honor the customs and the traditions and be authentically as accurate as you can, because it matters so much, because you want to represent their culture properly. But yet, what about that for the Odyssey? Where is that? I mean, you know, and again, they talk about the backlash online, but they fail to mention the entire you know, country of Greece has a problem with this movie for the very same reasons. Like, where are the Greek people? Why are you showing these people who are not Greek being Greeks? You know, Zendaya, she doesn't look Greek. Neither does Lupita Nyong'o. Well, why are they in this movie? They don't look like Greeks. Matt Damon doesn't look Greek. Why is he in this movie? You see, these are things they're asking. But see, that's okay, because that culture is the bad culture, you see. That's how that works. When it's the culture you hate, it's okay to denigrate it in any way you want, to downplay it, to bring it down, to you know, alter it to fit whatever narrative you want, because that one's okay to do too. You know, it's just like we see with so much other stuff, like with black people, for example. You know, black people can be racist to white people all day long, calling them crackers and mayo monkeys and, you know, saltines and all these words they use to denigrate white people. And that's okay. That's not racist. But if a white person says something that could be seen as a racially derogatory comment, oh, that's absolute racism. Only white people can be racist. You see what this is? You see how it's all intersecting now? This is what this is about. This is what the culture wars have always been about at the core, when you really get down to them. You know, my good friend RJ over at the YouTube channel, The Fourth Age, go check him out if you haven't. He does good work over there. He's talked about what the heroic virtues are in fiction and in storytelling, and how modern creatives don't seem to understand them or care to understand them. This is how you end up with characters who are supposed to be heroes but act like villains, and characters who are supposed to be villains but yet they're sympathetic like a hero, because they don't understand the tenets that are necessary. And those tenets are all based in Western culture. And Western culture begins where? With Greece. This is where all of our stuff that we hold dear, this is where it all came from. It was the Greeks who brought the first steps, the foundations to Western culture. And, you know, it's funny to me that they denigrate it the way that they do. But it's not really much of a surprise when you take into account things like I'm about to show you here. This is Emily Wilson, who is a feminist writer who did a translation of the Odyssey. And this, more than any other, people are saying, is the version that Nolan is using in the film. This is what he's using as his template for the movie. And I think it's important that we discuss this, because this again shows you the mentalities of what's going on and why things are happening the way that they're happening. It's not by accident. This is all very much on purpose, despite what they will tell you otherwise. But to understand this, I think we need to understand a little bit more about Miss Emily Wilson herself. So let's share some things here that will give you a little more idea about good old Emily Wilson. And here it is. Let me share the screen. This is the wiki about the translation that she did. And, you know, critical reception was largely positive, but there has been backlash to it. Let me see if we find it here. Yeah, the reception. It was praised as an accessible introduction to the poem, with critics highlighting its plain use of language. Balmer calls Wilson a careful and creative scholar whose translation rejects the notion that ancient epics can only be translated by established poets. So again, you know, what is it? Essayist Matt Wilson reported being floored by Wilson's alliterative, musical, natural, and subtle treatment of the poem's first line. So you can see a lot of praise to the way she did, but there was criticism. Other scholars criticized Wilson's translation as a deviation from the content of the original. South African scholar Richard Whittaker wrote that the two great novelites of Wilson's The Odyssey are the way she separates a group of characters that we might term underdogs, notably the Cyclops and the suitors and their allies, in a sympathetic light, while representing Odysseus as on balance reprehensible. The big problem, however, with Wilson's heterodox approach to the characters of the Odyssey is that she can sustain it only by distorting and misrepresenting what the Greek text says. Whittaker argued that Wilson makes no effort to overcome her obvious and personal and anachronistic biases. There you go, right there. A short-term version of that is she let her own socio-political views influence the way she translated the text. So the thing again, so that like the Cyclops is sympathetic, but Odysseus is now reprehensible. So the hero is bad and the bad guy is good. This is what I'm talking about. This is the degradation of Western culture. This is what they do. And, you know, it's just become so much more clear to me as I've gone through this stuff. I mean, I've been talking about this kind of thing in comics for years. You guys remember all my sequential thinking pieces I did, you know, over the years, you know, on this channel. And those were all dancing around the skirts of all this. But now that, you know, I'm really delving more into this stuff, I'm seeing the patterns. You know, you have to just, I mean, think about it. Getting rid of Tony Stark to bring in Riri Williams. Getting rid of Thor Odinson to bring in Jane Foster. Getting rid of Peter Parker Spider-Man for Miles Morales. You see what's happening here. You're taking away the white heroes the epic characters that we all know, and replacing them with quote-unquote diverse characters. And why are they doing this? Because they hate Western culture. That's why we're seeing this in the Odyssey. And the Odyssey is even worse than the superhero, because the superheroes are just an extension of what we already know are like those heroic standards, like the hero's journey and all these other things in literature that we know about how to, you know, the heroic virtues that my friend RJ talks about. These are things that have already been established by the time we get to the superheroes. So, changing them, that's like changing on the fringes. Now we're going to the core with the Odyssey. This is what I'm talking about. This is the problem. See, this is again something that John Campea, you saw, he didn't talk about this. He briefly mentions the Odyssey, but he never talks about what's underlying it. And again, if we go to some more stuff here with good old Emily Wilson here, which as I share the screen I will do. This is the story here. No one has dealt with more angry Odyssey bros than Emily Wilson. Again, just from a couple weeks ago. And first of all, I just want to get down to this right here. This is Emily Wilson. I mean, why is it why does it always have to be so accurate to the stereotype? I mean, all we need for her is a pierced septum ring, and maybe pack on about another 60 pounds, and she fits the stereotype to a feminist to a T, to a person who wants to deconstruct Western culture. And you can see this in what she says here. Let's see, here it is. What's it like to find yourself in the middle of a culture war? It's very weird. The whole new resurgence of the culture war with the Christopher Nolan movie coming up. I thought it had all died down. I tried to remind myself quite regularly that it has nothing to do with me, because I genuinely believe it's this strange cultural phenomenon. After I published the Odyssey translation, it was both celebrated in quite simplistic ways as a work of girl power, and it also faced backlash. I thought maybe this is actually useful as I engage with the epic poem that's so much about shame, blame, glory, celebrity, eternal flame, and the vulnerabilities of fame that can be generated by other people's discourse. So I sort of translated it into helping me imaginatively as I was thinking through how the Iliad's version of celebrity is similar and different to the very fraught culture wars of today. At least I'm not getting speared in the eyeball. That's great. So you see right here, she's admitting she's altering things for her own benefit, for her own viewpoint. She's not actually looking at the text and go, well, what's the story actually say? It's like, well, how can I change it? What is it? If this was today, how would this react today? How can I modernize this? And that's the problem here, And so they talk more about her changes, and then they bring up the whole thing about Troy. He goes, about how there was interest that was brought about in it. He goes, there was a jump, not so much with the ancient Greek classes, but with the big gen ed classes like Intro to Greek and Roman Myth. Definitely see an enrollment spike. I honestly didn't love Troy, but the special effects and Brad Pitt in a skirt were fun. This is going to be the same kind of thing. It's going to have a lot of interesting things to discuss, and we'll get new audience engaged with the IP. Again, but what kind of audience are we going to get? See, this is again the things they never tell you. This is the stuff they don't tell you. They don't want the audience who would actually be interested in what the real Odyssey story is. Like if you went by the actual text of the story, people who are interested in that, they don't want those people for their audience. They want the modern audience. That's what she means. This is the problem I have with these people and what they do. It shows me, and here it is here. Have you followed the online discourse about the film so far, about the new Odyssey film? He goes, it's made up controversy. Nobody's seen the movie. There it is again, the old chestnut, just like John Campea. It's just the usual triggers about race and gender, and I find it very tedious. Yes, well, it's tedious because, you keep making it an issue. If you just did what you had to do, which is to tell the story the way it should be told, with featuring people who fit the parameters of the characters in the story, it wouldn't be a problem. But no, you have to change things because you want to bring about a change in the way Western culture is viewed. This is what cultural Marxism is, folks. This is how it works. It infiltrates and destroys from within. You alter stuff that you don't like about that culture and say that it needs to be changed for a modern audience. It needs to be changed for reasons of inclusion. Is it all sounding familiar? And then you end up getting terms like anti-racist, anti-colonialism, and of course, one of my favorites, you're on stolen land. To delegitimize, that's the key here. They want to delegitimize Western society and Western culture as illegitimate so they can tear it all down and rebuild it in their own twisted Marxist views. That's what's going on. That's why what's happening with the Odyssey matters so much, because this is like a cornerstone of the Western civilization, of Western values, of Western culture. This isn't just some little fringe thing that was created many, many years later. This is a core. This speaks to the core of what Western values and traditions and culture are about. So to alter that, you ultimately alter, everything. And that's the ultimate end goal of all this. This is why it's happening. This is why you have a black Helen of Troy. This is why you have a transgender Sinon. This is why you have, all these, the armor looks weird, and the ships aren't right, and the language is altered, and you got rap songs in the credits, because that's what they want. They want to say, this is better. This is how it should be. Not the way it was, the way it should be. And again, it's funny because, John Campea talked about preferences. But what this isn't about preferences. It's about altering what is, what's supposed to be. The Odyssey is not just some, little story told by an idiot. This is a key component to Western civilization and to the values we all hold dear. The values that seem to be slipping away as the days go by. And as you can see, it spreads out. It spreads out to even further things. Like I said, I brought up the whole thing, you're on stolen land. That's created when you think that there is no right for Western culture to call itself even a culture. No, you're just a bunch of thieves. That's what that does. It's really stymieing to me how deep this rot runs and how it's gotten this far. I worry sometimes. Again, look at the stuff that's happening with ICE. And we're talking about protecting the borders of a nation. And people are fighting the people who are trying to do that, who are trying to take out people who have illegally come into a nation against the laws. And yet that doesn't matter to these people. Why? Because the law is illegitimate. Why? Because the government is illegitimate. Why? Because the culture is illegitimate. The culture you're trying to save with your border patrol and your customs and immigration policies is all illegitimate. This is what it is. This is what they're doing. Now, does Nolan believe all this stuff? Does he sign on and say, hey, I believe the same? I don't know. I know his wife is woke, and so I'm sure he gets it in his ear all the time. But whether he's doing this because he's a true believer, or if he's just a coward afraid to stand up to those who do it, who are the true believers, the end result is still the same. It doesn't matter, cowardice or belief, it all ends up the same. And this is why this matters. And I hope people wake up to this and see what's going on, because it really is something that's happening very quickly. It's happening quicker than I thought it would. And like I said, and once you've seen this pattern, as I'm seeing it now, you cannot unsee it. You start to see it everywhere. Like I said, in the immigration debates, in the culture, in our entertainment, in our discourse with each other, with the rise of the socialists you see that are happening now, where they're getting political power in the country. Do you think that's going to end well? No, it's not, because the socialists want to again erase Western culture and replace it with their idea of what the culture should be. That's what all of this is. And Nolan is playing into this, whether he believes it or not, with the Odyssey. And again, it's something we need to wake up to and admit is a problem. Because as you're going to see here, again, it goes beyond justice. Because again, it shows you there is pushback to this, though, and that's what they're angry about. That's what John Campea was angry about. He was angry about the pushback. You saw that he was angry about them getting mad and had to call him racist. Why did he do that? Because it's all they have. the shaming tactic to try to silence people. And why? Because the pushback is real, and because the pushback matters, because it's having an effect. Even if they don't want to admit it, even if they want to downplay it and say, "Oh, it's not that important. It's a stupid culture war. It doesn't matter." No, it absolutely matters, and they know it does. That's why they want you to believe it doesn't, because we are having an impact, and I'm going to show you that right here. Look at this, Supergirl, biggest bomb this year, but not the only one. Minions and Monsters is failing at the box office. The Moana live action is a failure at the box office. Masters of the Universe, failure at the box office. The Bride, failure at the box office. 28 years later, The Bone Temple, failure at the box office. Return to Silent Hill, failure at the box office. Now, what do all these have in common? Well, these are all based on significant properties that in the past were successful. They could make money, and now they don't. Why is that? Why are all these things failing so badly? Why are they not making the money? Because of the altering that's being done, because of the lack of care for Western culture, and they're changing things in ways that they should not be changed, just like in the Odyssey, which is why I think it's going to fail just like all of these. And the one that really gets you, that Nolan should really have been paying attention to when this happened, our Animal Farm, that's one, that's another one that failed, but this one is the real big one, Disclosure Day. Now you say, well, why is this, James? This is not part of a franchise or some established work like Animal Farm. This is a whole new concept created by Steven Spielberg. Yes, Steven Spielberg. Spielberg, who back in the 80s was untouchable. If you heard about a movie that Steven Spielberg was working on, you would go see it. You didn't care what it was about. You had to see the new Spielberg film. And, well, who's in that catbird seat right now? Why, it's Christopher Nolan. But this Disclosure Day came out, and it's a failure. I mean, it didn't bomb as bad as, say, Supergirl, but then few things probably ever could. But it is bombing at the box office. It is not expected to make back its money. It's expected to be another loss for the studios. And even worse, for Steven Spielberg, it shows he no longer has the cachet he used to have in the culture. People will no longer jump to go see a Steven Spielberg movie because of the last 20 years of garbage he has produced by taking part in the bringing down of Western culture. This is why he's at that stage now. And Nolan, I fully believe the Odyssey is going to do to him what Disclosure Day is doing to Spielberg. I fully believe that with all my heart and soul, because this is how I think it's probably going to end for him. Just like this. Just like this. Because when you don't stand up to the cultural Marxists, when you allow a culture to be destroyed because you hate it, or you don't think it's important, or you think that the flaws within it, or the you say the warts, as I would say, like I love the Western culture, I love America, warts and all. I know the country's not perfect, it never has been, but for all its flaws, I know there's nothing better, and I don't want that to go away, because if it goes away, then I lose everything. And that's what we need to see when we're seeing these things happen. When we're watching these things happen, like in the Odyssey, where they're altering all these things in the comics, in the movies, in the television, in the culture. It all matters. Culture wars matter very much. And people need to understand this. It has to be known that these things matter, because if your culture doesn't matter to you, it will be taken down. And that's what they're trying to do now. And guys like Nolan, again, maybe he's not a believer in that. Maybe he's just, as Lenin said, a useful idiot. He's afraid of getting backlash. He's afraid of not getting awards. Because, like I said, he got backlash when he did Dunkirk. And it had an all-white cast because, well, it was a World War II movie set in Dunkirk, France, where it was all white people in the fight. But he got backlash for that. And now, of course, he's the whole thing with the Academy, with their award ceremonies. If they have all these new policies, you have to do this, 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 and this to get a nomination. Not just create a great movie, but it has to check these boxes for inclusion and DEI stuff before you can be, accepted as a contender. So they're pushing all this stuff. And whether he's doing it out of fear or belief, as I said, doesn't really matter, because the end result is the same. And really, What he needs to do, what all of them need to do, is just simply one thing. One thing that is, I've said before many times and has been said by others, but I'm going to let someone else say it here. I'm going to let the great Eric July be the voice for me on this. He's going to be the one. He's going to be the one to do this. He's going to be the one to bring this to us. So I'm going to let him speak, and then I'll finish it out here.
Say some things that may not be that popular, but trust me on this. I'm telling you this from the perspective of a publisher. But this idea that you can just get out there and create, the audience comes to you as if you are God's gift to that audience. I get it. People that are in creative industries are often led to believe that, right? It's all about being a creative and all that good stuff. But the reality is this: if you want to eat, if you want to thrive, if you want to be able to feed your family and make it as an independent creator, you need to understand you are in the service industry. That's the bottom line. You're in the service industry. None of what we do matters unless there's an audience that we are out there serving, which is why I'm always telling my creative teams to think like the reader, right? I understand you got all these rules and things that you need to follow that you've been sort of led to believe is true, because some of it is among other creators. But the bottom line is, when you are the one that is responsible for putting that stuff out there and hoping that you can not only feed yourself, but those are around you that are off eating off of that property or whatever you're creating. Doesn't matter if it's comic books, doesn't matter if it's you're trying to do film, doesn't matter. If you're trying to entertain, video games for that matter, you got to understand that you're in the service industry. And that doesn't diminish what you do as a creative at all, because I think the best creators out there are the ones that actually understand that, where you can put your spin on whatever that you're doing that is so unique that only you can come up with it, but ultimately it's for somebody. None of it matters if you can't accomplish exactly that. So humble yourself and realize that you are in the service industry if you are an entertainer.
And there you have it. Humble yourselves. That's what's lacking in all these people. Everyone, all these cultural Marxists have no humility whatsoever. And the people who kowtow to them also have no humility whatsoever. This is what's missing. We need people to understand this, that creatives, just because you're creative doesn't mean that you are, as he said, God's gift to the world. You still have to win over an audience. You have to make them want to support you. You're not owed their support. You have to earn it. You have to show them that you deserve it. And that's what we don't see anymore in these creators. And why? Because they don't feel a need to do that. Because they're not focused on good business, as Eric July is talking here. They're focused on destroying Western culture. This is the ultimate end goal. This is what all this has been. Everything I've talked about in the past when talking about topics like this, with the comics and the movies and the TV and all the rest, it's all been building to this. This is what it is. This is the ultimate end game. And we need to understand that. And we need to show them that, they cannot just do this and walk away clean. Again, just like with John Campea telling us, oh, you don't have a right to an opinion until you paid money to see the movie. No, by then it's too late. They've got your money and they got your attention and they got the success that they wanted, and now they don't need you. What do you have left to hold against them? Even if you don't like what they did, even if you can point out how it's wrong, the way I've just done here, what do you have to hold against them now? They've already got your money. They have the control. They have the power. What's left? Like I said, the only reason that people like John Campea and Marlowe at the Variety and stuff are attacking people who are being critical of what they've seen from the Odyssey is because they know that that's the only thing that might affect the box office. Those criticisms may get people to not go watch it. And if they don't, the movie fails. And if the movie fails, then Nolan fails. And if Nolan fails, he then will suffer, as will the studio, as will all of the entertainment industry. And they know this. They don't want that. They don't want the failures. They want stuff to succeed because they believe that their views are the correct views. I'm on the right side of history. But you're not. Not when you have to destroy the culture that's giving you everything you have. I see so many videos of stuff, people just who are just ingrates to what Western culture has provided the world, the literature, the architecture, the artistry, the freedoms and creativity and liberty, all these things that have come. I mean, if other cultures were so great, why can't they do those things? I mean, you could say, well, they have, yes, but to the degree of Western culture, no. And that all boils down to, again, the butthurt of history. The Western Europeans were better at conquering, better at tactics, better at, settling, better at all these things than all these other cultures that they so revere were able to do. They were successful while the others were not. And it's just generational butthurt. That's what it comes down to. This is why they want to destroy Western culture, because it was successful and it made them look lesser. And rather than say, you know what, maybe we should just work to build up our own, they instead want to destroy the West and in a pit of vengeance. That's what it is, because that's what all activism boils down to. I've said this many times. Activism, at its heart, at its core, activism is vengeance. That's all it is, because it's never accomplished anything of value ever, anywhere, for anyone. That it's just about taking it to those you hate. Again, I'll just bring up an easy example. We got the Black Little Mermaid film that Disney did a few years ago. You saw that, right? Why do that? Why make Ariel a black girl? There's no point to that, because if you know anything about history, and of course I myself do, there are African lores about black mermaids, like whole colonies of black mermaids. So if you want black mermaids, why not tell one of those historical stories from African lore? I mean, that gives you the representation you say you want, right? And it's focused on the lore that you believe in, right? And it would have to be black actors, because of course it's based on African lore. We got to be historically correct, right? So all that happens, it gets you what you want, right? But yet it doesn't. They don't. They say, no, we're going to change Hans Christian Andersen's, a Danish man, a white European, his story. We're going to change it and make his white mermaid black. Why? Because it takes something away from that culture. It takes something away from the people they hate. That's what this has always been about. That's what the culture wars are all about. And I wish people would wake up to this. Got Angie here. No, not really. I'm not a big Holland fan. I don't care for his take on Spider-Man. For me, the Spider-Man's always probably going to be Tobey Maguire. That's my Spider-Man. I love those Raimi movies. Even 3, although it's the lesser of the trilogy, but still, that's my feeling. But no, I'm not head up. But I do think that this is going to be probably the one movie that that breaks the blockbuster bombing that we've been seeing all year so far. I think this will be the one movie that actually probably make some money. Again, provided they don't go too crazy with changes like we're seeing in the Odyssey. If they don't go that kind of route, I think this movie will make money. Sure, go ahead. I'll answer that question, your Star Wars question. I got no problem with that. What's the question? Hit me up. I'm not sure, because I haven't watched the Maul Shadow Lord. I haven't watched anything Star Wars for quite a while, because it's just become so disenfranchising a brand now. They've really ruined the franchise with like what we're seeing here, this cultural Marxism, like something like the Acolyte, where you turn the Jedis into basically the villains of the story. I mean, the Jedis have always been the good guys. That's the point of Star Wars, is the Jedis are the good guys, the Sith are the bad guys. And here in the Acolyte, they switched it around and said, well, really, it's kind of like the Jedis who are the bad guys, and the Sith aren't so bad. When you're going to do that, you kind of defeat the whole purpose to Star Wars. And so, I don't know. Could Keanu Reeves play a great Darth Revan? Maybe. I mean, but again, it's not something I would watch, because I've just, they've kind of killed Star Wars. Star Wars is dead. I mean, The Mandalorian's failure. That's another movie I probably should have put in my list there. The Mandalorian and Grogu, that failed at the box office big time. You know, all these failures, it all shows you that there is pushback to this stuff. We can fight back. We don't have to accept what they're doing. We don't have to sit there and go, hey, we just got to sit here and take this. We can fight back, and we should. And so that's what I hope we do. That's what I hope we do, and we fight back and get things back to the way they should be, you know, because we have to protect the Western culture or it will go away. Just like anything else, you know, if you don't protect what you value, it will go away. It will get taken or stolen or destroyed. You have to be willing to fight for it. And that's what I hope we start to see now is more fighting to keep the culture, because it really matters. So what's my hot take on the Odyssey? I think, you know, it'll probably have a pretty big opening weekend based solely on the fact it's a Nolan film. You know, he's, like I say, he's the one director that people will probably go and see any movie just because he's the director. But I think after that, the question is, will it have legs? And I don't think it will. I think all the changes, all the stuff they've done to denigrate the Odyssey's, you know, history and Western culture and everything that it's about is going to come back to bite it in the ass, and it's going to end up not making money. It's going to lose money. It may not, again, it may not be as big of a failure as like Supergirl was, but it's not going to make money. It's going to be like Disclosure Day. It's not going to make money. It's not going to be a huge success, and it's going to damage Nolan, and it's going to damage, you know, the studios, and you know, they don't seem to care too much. But so, you know, we'll just have to see how that plays out. But that's my prediction: is strong opening weekend, and then very quickly it's going to sort of fall off a cliff shortly after that, because people are going to see this for what it is. They're going to see, you know, how it's, you know, not accurate, but like actually denigrating to the source material in what they're doing. And you know, again, it's something we have to wake up to. But again, just once you're seeing the patterns, you know, it's impossible to not see them anymore. And that's how it is for me now. I cannot not see the patterns of everything that's been happening with this stuff, with the culture wars. And you know, it bleeds into everything else. You think it's just about movies or just about comics or whatever, and it's really not. It's really not. It's about what we say about ourselves as a people, and as you know, as a culture. And you know, that's why this stuff matters so much. That's why changing things in the Odyssey is so bad, because it denigrates the very foundations of the culture in which we are all a part right now. And you know, Western culture is definitely under attack from all sides and from within, and it's definitely a very dangerous thing to see happening and play out. But all we can do is just try to stand up against it as best we can. And so I would suggest, you know, you do that, you know, by supporting people who, you know, understand what a hero is supposed to be, and you know, are not willing to you know, alter our history and our epics and our myths and legends because they don't fit their socio-political belief systems, because that's how you end up with just slump. And you know, we've seen plenty of that over the last decade or so, and we don't need to see any more. So, but last thing I want to do here that I want to bring up for you guys is let's see here. There it is. Okay. I'm going to share the screen one last time here. And this of course is my YouTube community page, which is linked down there below in the description. You guys can go check it out. I do all kinds of polls on here, and you know, here I got the current one. Here is the new one. Is here is should Hollywood respect Western culture in its products the same way it does for foreign cultures? As you saw, with they want to show all this respect to the Moana and the Polynesian culture, but then when it comes to the Odyssey and the Grecian culture, well, no, we're not going to show them respect. And I can see here I already got a vote that's saying that they should. And you know, I do a lot of great polls here. So I try to ask some insightful questions. And sometimes they're fun questions. You know, like this one right here: should comics be entertainment first or collectibles first? And you can see here with all the votes, it's unanimous. It should be entertainment first. So that's kind of what I do here. And no, nobody wants that. Trust me. You just let me do polls on my community page and leave it at that. We don't want this. This is what something what nobody wants, especially me. No. But yeah, so I wanted to just point this out to you guys. I do have a new poll up now for this, as you know, as I've been talking about this. So head on over there and check that out. And if you want to take any other polls, please do. But you know, I'm really interested in how this one turns out because, like I said, I really thought I brought some really insightful stuff in this, and it's really important to me that we kind of get a gauge on how people feel about this because I definitely think they should respect Western culture in the properties that they make. You know, especially when they're going to base it off of things that are like so key to Western culture, like the Odyssey. You know, so there's like foundational stuff. You need to show respect to the culture, and if you don't, you won't have it for very long. So, but I wanted to just point that out to you guys so you can go check that out and go do that. And I guess that'll about do it for the stream here. Like I said, it was all pretty much almost last minute. But I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got some fun out of this. I hope you got some interesting, thoughtful ideas and some you know, some insights from me in this. Like I said, it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, and I've talked about a lot. And like I said, it all seems to be like a culmination is happening here with this film. And yes, I'm glad that you do anti-entity. Yes, I think we should protect our culture as much as we can with all the forces that are trying to destroy it now. So, but I want to hear what you guys got to say. And you know, I thank you all for joining me today. I hope, like I said, you got something out of this. I will be back soon with some more stuff. I got another artistry appreciation I'll be doing with Andy Smith in the next few days. I'll have that up probably sometime next week. So we got that to look forward to, and I got some other stuff. And for those of you who got in late, well, I guess you can just do a quick rewind and rewatch all of this so you can get caught up with everybody else. But I thank you all for joining me today, and I will be back soon with more stuff for you guys. And until next time, take care.